Hello world, I'm Whitney Bandel and welcome to another video from my HTML and CSS course. In this video we will be looking at media and interactivity. So to start off with, I want us to take a look at week 7. I have some links that are related to the final project that I want you to be aware of. So the first section under resources is the MLA general format. I would suggest you use this when you are creating your citations and your credits on your credits page. So if we kind of scroll through here, you'll notice that we're on MLA formatting and style guide, and we can see paper format, general guidelines. We're going to go down to MLA works cited electronic sources. Now, most of your information is probably going to come from a website. So this will give you guidelines and kind of an order of information to start off with. You might not have all of this information, but some of it you should have no matter what. So author and or editor names if possible, article name and quotation marks. This should be pretty easy to find if it's an article. Title of the website, project, or book in italics. This you should definitely have. Any version numbers if available. Publisher information, including the publisher name and publishing date. Take note of any page numbers. You might not have this, but you'll definitely have URL, so you should have a link to where you are actually accessing the information, the date you access the material, so that you should have no matter what. So here they actually have an example of the order of how you would create your citation. I would also suggest at the end also adding media. So an example would be, if it's a book, typing in book, article, image, video, audio file, just so that way I can tell what the actual file is that you are referencing. Here we have information for citing an entire website, page on a site, an ebook, an image, article. So you're going to want to use this for your credits page. Here we have YouTube video, so you should be able to find everything that you need here. And then I've had a couple questions in the past about CSS3. Most of the CSS3 that is specifically referenced in your textbook is in chapter 11. But I have some resources here that go over CSS3. Your final project says that you need to have at least one CSS3 property in your styles, and you need to make a notation of it. So these websites will kind of take a look at what is in CSS3. Now CSS is always kind of changing and evolving, so it's a little bit hard to kind of pinpoint what is specifically from CSS3. But I would suggest kind of looking through these pages. This one is a little bit more dense and wordy, but it'll go over how everything has kind of changed, things that are still in progress. So here we have some documentation on backgrounds, repeating, values. I would suggest taking a look at this one though. So this is css3.info. And here we're breaking down things a little bit more specific. So border color, border image, border radius, HSL color, HSLA colors. In particular, the opacity is kind of what they're looking at. Different text effects, text shadow. And then what your textbook mostly looks at is this idea of the transitions. And I believe your homework example has you practice doing one of these transitions. So you could use a transition as your example in your code if you wanted to. So what we're going to look at in this video is predominantly going to be different types of media. And rather than having you have to download a bunch of different media to work with, I would suggest going through all the examples in the textbook. They'll provide media that you can work with. And then I'm going to link to a bunch of different W3 Schools projects for us to kind of just look through. I did want to kind of go over some different file formats again. These are referenced in your textbook. We've talked a little bit about different common file format types. So in the past, we've talked a little bit about common file formats, and your textbook lists some common file formats for audio and video. For audio, they list WAV, AIFF, MID, AU, MP3, OGG, M4A. Now, it's going to depend a lot on your audience and how you are going to provide audio. A lot of older websites would provide file downloads that people could look at the files on their own computer. And in that case, the file formats really mattered because they needed to be compatible with a lot of different options, especially if there was proprietary software on different computers. For example, Mac computers and PC computers might have different proprietary software which are only capable of looking at certain file formats. That's a bit less of an issue now, but it is still something you want to be aware of, especially if you are providing files that people are going to be downloading. We can actually take a look at the HTML multimedia page. They have kind of a similar list to your textbook for different common file formats. Let's see, here's video. And here we have audio. So in a slightly different order. Here we have MIDI, Real Audio, WMA, which is for Windows Media Audio, Advanced Audio Coding, AAC. This is developed by Apple. WAV file. This is one that you're probably going to use most common in addition to an MP3. A lot of times WAV files work better in a lot of different software. So I'd actually suggest if you have the option between choosing between a WAV file and an MP3 file, I would suggest providing a WAV file, but either one of these is going to be a good choice, WAV, MP3. As you can see, WAV says it plays well on Windows, Macintosh, and Linux. MP3 files are actually the sound part of the MPEG files. MP3 is the most popular format for music players. Combines good compression with high quality, supported by all browsers. And then MP4 also works, but it's a video format. And then we might as well scroll up and take a look at video. Now your textbook mentions .mov, .avi, .flv, .wmv, .mpg, .m4v, and .mp4, .3gp, .ogv or .ogg, and .webm. So again, we can see there's a pretty similar list. I would suggest we take a look predominantly at AVI, QuickTime, which is MOV, and MP4s. So if you are working with video, I would say these are going to be the three formats that you're going to encounter probably the most. We'll take a look at AVI first, Audio Video Interleave, developed by Microsoft. Plays well on Windows computers, but not in web browsers. Now, AVI files are proprietary towards PC computers, so if somebody is on a Mac, they might not be able to play it. The opposite of that being .mov, which is a QuickTime file developed by Apple, also commonly used, plays well on Apple computers, but not in web browsers. So both of these are going to have problems with either PC or Mac. And then if we go down to MP4, developed by the Moving Pictures Expert Group, based on QuickTime, commonly used in your video cameras and TV hardware, supported by all HTML5 browsers. So MP4, developed by the Moving Pictures Expert Group, based on QuickTime, commonly used in your video cameras and TV hardware, supported by all HTML5 browsers, recommended by YouTube. I'm going to recommend that you work with MP4 as much as possible because it can be used on both PC and Mac, and like this documents, it's recommended by YouTube and it's compatible with HTML5 browsers. So let's open up our text editor. We're not going to work with actual files, but we'll just kind of practice typing in the code of how you would reference these. So let's do file new, save as, we'll do files.html. So we're going to start our document like we normally do. For the title, let's do file formats. And in the body, let's go ahead and put our notes. So let's do an H1 and we'll say common audio file formats. And we'll do an unordered list. We'll say .wave, .aiff, .mid, .au, .mp3, .ogeg, .m4a. And then let's add a couple breaks. We'll do another H1. So we'll say common video file formats. Do another list. .mov, .avi, .flv, .wmv, .mpg, .m4v, and .mp4, .3gp, .ogv or .ogg, .webm. Alright, and then we'll do another couple breaks. And then we're going to go ahead and link to a file. So we'll do an anchor link, href equals, and we're going to just make up a file. So we'll say file, and it's going to be an MP3 file. And then we'll say title of file, and our anchor link, and then parentheses, we're just going to say MP3. So I'm going to move this out of the way for now. Kind of go back to our browser. We're going to open this. Hit save, refresh. So here we have our notes, and then we have our file, And so if we clicked on this and if there was actually a file, it would trigger our browser so that way someone could have access to it. We technically don't need to have this parentheses, but this just helps somebody know what the file is. So for example, we could have another file. Maybe this is file dot, just call this MOV, title of file. And then here we could say that this is going to be an MOV file, just to let people know what to expect. So if they want to see just the audio version of the file, or if they wanted to see a video option of the same file, they'd have options for which one they want to download. We could add a break. So those will open using whatever people have installed on the computer. When you are working with audio and video, it's important for you to provide transcripts, captions, or printable PDF files. This is going to help people who aren't able to access the information, whether it's they aren't able to listen to the audio, or maybe they can't see what's happening in the video. And so providing a transcript can help with people who aren't able to listen to it. It can also help people who maybe don't have time to listen to the whole file. Maybe they want to scan through the information real quickly to find out what's relevant. You can also add timestamps so that way people could see if there is a part of the file that they want to jump to find the relevant information. This can be really helpful for longer files too, like podcasts, where there's going to be a really long file. Next, in your textbook, it's going to take a look at Flash and HTML5 embedded element. Adobe Flash was used a lot in the past, but it is no longer supported by Apple devices. And so you'll notice that a lot of websites that used to use Flash are actually moving away from it. Flash has also been replaced with Adobe Animate CC. So those are things to be aware of when you are choosing how to represent elements on your website. The next link I want us to take a look at is we have HTML5 video. I'm going to click try it yourself. Here we have code for actually working with the video element, which is going to be HTML5. So here we have a description that says how it works. The controls attribute allows video controls like play, pause, and volume. It's a good idea to always include width and height attributes. If height and width are not set, the page might flicker while the video loads. It helps kind of preload the specific dimensions that the video is going to need once it's there, but while it references the file. So if it takes a while for the file to be uploaded, there's at least kind of a placeholder space for it. The source element allows you to specify alternative video files, which the browser may choose from. So here we have our video opening and end tags. Inside they have specified the width and height, and then they have autoplay listed in here. And then within the opening end tags, they have a couple of sources, which the source element is written source, and then it has a source in it, which is referencing the source, and then it's saying the type of source. So it's saying that it's video and it's MP4. And kind of like the image, it's just going to be one tag. So we could do try yourself here. There's a couple different try it yourself files. Here we have the controls are provided, again, two different sources. And a warning, your browser does not support HTML5 if it's not going to work. And then underneath we have a courtesy and a link that's actually taking you to the website. Let's see this other one. Here we also have the controls, two different source videos. So this would also change depending on what your computer browser might support. So you can try these out. Again, I'm referencing these just so that you don't have to download any files yourself, and then I would again recommend that you use whatever the textbook provides to take a look. Don't really need that anymore. Audio for HTML5 audio. This is before HTML5 audio files could only be played in a browser with a plugin like Flash. So now we use the audio element. Here we have audio, again, opening end tags. We're specifying that we want controls. We have 2 different sources, and then an error message just in case somebody doesn't have HTML5 supported in their browser. So we can do try it yourself, and they have an audio file that you can try out. If you wanted to, you could add these to your notes as well, just so you have everything in place. So I'd actually say we could copy this and then put this under video as an example. And then I'm gonna copy audio and place it under our audio as an example. So we could hit save, refresh this, and then we have kind of an idea of what it would look like. Again, since we don't have the file, it's going to give us an error where it's saying that it's not supported or it's not found because we don't actually have it downloaded. Next, I have a link to HTML plugin. So if you had a plugin that you wanted to use, purpose of a plugin is to extend the functionality of a web browser. Helper applications. Plugins are computer programs that extend the standard functionality of a web browser. Examples of well-known plugins are Java applets. Plugins can be added to web pages with the object tag or the embedded tag. So these you'll probably use more often. Here the object element is just written as object, supported by all browsers. We can specify the width and height, and then here we have data equals, and then it's linking to file. We're going to be interested in this embedded element. So embedded element is supported in all major browsers. Embedded element also defines an embedded object within an HTML document. Web browsers have supported the embedded element for a long time. However, it has not been a part of the HTML specifications before HTML5. And here we again have the option of trying it for ourselves. The next link I have is HTML YouTube videos. Now, when we're looking at these files for audio and video, it's become a lot more common for people to not just put videos directly on their website, but to link to files that are hosted by websites like YouTube. A common website to host audio files is SoundCloud. It's kind of like the YouTube for audio, but you can create an account for free and then you can link to specific audio files. So I'm just going to click on one of these, and depending, I can hit share, I can embed, and it will give me this iframe code to link to this file on my own website. You can do the same thing for YouTube, where you could click on a file and we could click on share. I can do embedded, and then I'll have this option of having this iframe. I can say when it wants to start, and then I can choose different options like show player controls or not. So here they have the example of this iframe giving a specific width, height, showing the source, and putting it all within an iframe. So you can do iframes with both audio or video files, and it helps you link to sources that are hosted on another website. This can be really helpful, especially if people are wanting to use apps, maybe on their phone, to actually watch specific files in a preferred app. It can also help with cross-marketing, where somebody could encounter your video on YouTube as well as encountering your video on your website versus if you just have a video hosted on your website, people can only find that video on your website. So some files might make more sense as being only on your website. Maybe you don't want people to randomly encounter them, whereas others, for marketing purposes, might be best used in multiple locations. And in that case, YouTube's going to help people randomly come across it as well. So we could actually add in some of this code too if you wanted to add this to your notes. We could add in an iframe example. We could do the same thing with the plugin. You could add in object, and embed. So I'm going to leave this up to you. We don't have files for these, so they're all going to be broken anyways, but it could help with just kind of organizing your thoughts, and you can always visit these links. Next item I want us to look at is going to be this HTML5 canvas. The HTML canvas element is used to draw graphics on a web page. The graphic to the left is created with Canvas. It shows 4 elements: a red rectangle, a gradient rectangle, a multicolor rectangle, and a multicolor text. So if we take a look at what is HTML Canvas, it's an element used to draw graphics on the fly via JavaScript. The Canvas element is only a container for graphics. You must use JavaScript to actually draw the graphics. And here we have a list of the browsers that are going to support it and some examples. Canvas can be a really handy way of allowing people to interact with the website using JavaScript. The canvas is going to be written in HTML, and then the actual interactive part of it is going to be accessed with JavaScript. So here we have markup looks like canvas, ID equals my canvas. So you could add this to your notes as well. You need to specify an ID attribute and width and height. So here we have a couple of examples where it's just saying the canvas, opening end tags, ID, my canvas, width, height, style, just kind of have it has a plain border. And then there's nothing else going on in this example with this. Here we have how to draw a line. So in addition to the canvas, we actually have a script written in here. So we're adding some JavaScript where we're creating a variable C, which is creating the points for the X position. So it's saying where we're moving to from this point to this point. Where we have a circle, begin path, all of this, how to type in hello world. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with Canvas, especially when you start studying JavaScript. And I actually wanted to show you some resources that build off of this. I'm going to kind of skip down a little bit and go to future resources to check out. I'm going to open up Open Processing in P5.js. So my first introduction to working with web design was actually from working with processing, which is based off of the Java language, and they created a version of processing that works with JavaScript. It's called P5.js. And it allows you to create interactive components on your website using JavaScript, but using a library which kind of simplifies down the code. So for example, if we look at this idea of working with drawing a line, here we have a traditional script with JavaScript on how to create a line. And then by using processing p5.js's library to create a line, what we would be doing is just typing in a line and then putting in our coordinates. So it can actually be a lot more user friendly, especially for people who are getting started, does some of the heavy lifting for you. When you are working with different languages like p5.js, you do need to reference where you are bringing in those libraries from. But if this is something you're interested in, I would suggest taking a look at it. There's books and tutorials for it. There's a lot of different things that you can do. And p5.js isn't the only library that is developed for JavaScript to work with the canvas, but it is one example of how you can kind of take JavaScript in a different direction. This is a website, Open Processing, where you can look at how you can create interactive pieces for a website. How this works is you can create a free website, and if you do, you can save your code examples, but then they're also going to be open source for other people to look at. So we could look at one of these examples, and we could actually take a look at the code to figure out how it was that this person is actually doing the code behind their project. This is mouse click to change the pattern. So this is going to be based off of mouse click events. So here they're creating their canvas, and then they're translating and rotating. So part of why I wanted to bring this up too is your textbook is going to take a look at the transform property, which is, there's transform both in JavaScript and there's also transform in HTML. So they're a little bit different, but you'll notice that they do a lot of the same things. So your textbook will talk about rotating, scale, scaling by X, scaling by Y, skewing X, skewing Y, translating X and Y, rotating, scale, all of those. So these actually are kind of doing some of the same things. So here they are translating and rotating information. One example of this that we can kind of look at too. I've created this little guy up here, this camera, in p5.js, which is using JavaScript to do a similar thing. And I'm going to have us look at the code. So it might be a little bit hard to actually see, but up here I have a couple of variables which are the actual image pieces. I have the angle, and then I have the canvas defined, which, if I remember right, it's not the whole header, but it's kind of this box. So that way, if I resize, I have this canvas here, and then I just have a header behind it, which kind of helps fill in the rest of the space. Here I create the canvas, and if I looked at the HTML for this page, I would be writing this script in JavaScript and then referencing the canvas in the HTML as well. So I have a image that I'm loading up, I have a second image that I'm loading up. I'm doing a draw function where I'm just kind of adding in the background, the image, and then here I'm able to specify an angle, and then here again we have translate. What this is doing is it's shifting by a certain amount. So originally this image would be off in the left and 0, 0, and I'm telling it to move down and over a certain amount. And then I'm going to rotate the angle, and this is based off of the mouse position, which is mentioned up here. You could have it statically translate or statically rotate and be stationary, or you could also potentially, if you're doing your translations and rotations with something like JavaScript, you could actually have them happen as a way of interacting with the user. So in this case, the reason why I'm translating it is the rotation is based off of my mouse, and if I didn't translate it over 170 by 70, the rotation would be based off of this corner point. and so the rotation wouldn't happen around this joint. So now the rotation is actually happening based off of this location here. So now it's going to rotate based off of my position. So this is just an example of kind of that bigger idea. So there's a lot that you can do with just very simple ideas if you kind of practice and put your mind to it. But I would suggest if you're interested in JavaScript and kind of interactive ideas, taking a look at p5.js. They have a bunch of different references for you to take a look at. They have examples that you can practice with. All right, so that's Canvas. I also kind of touched this a little bit on transform, rotate, scale. There's also the transition property, which changes in property values to display in a smoother manner over a specified time. So if we look at CSS transitions, we have a couple options: transition, transition delay, transition duration, property, timing. So what you do is in your CSS, you would type in transition. You're going to specify the property you want to add an effect to, and then the duration of it. So in this example, the property we want to add it to is width, and then 2 seconds. So we'll try this. So now the width is going to change, and there's going to be kind of this delay of how it's going to change. And you'll notice too we have div, and we have our width, height, background, transition, and then here we have a transition again for kind of as a backup. This looks like this one says for Safari 3.1, 6.0. And then what we're kind of using to know what size it's going to go to is we say that there's going to be a hover. So it's going to change no matter what. The difference is it going to be immediate or is it going to slowly happen? A good guide when you're thinking about any sort of animation or transition is to think of the 12 principles of animation. So you can look these up. I just did a search real quick for the 12 principles. You can find, this is a good video, The Illusion of Life, but thinking about how to make something look more fluid, more believable. This is kind of running a little bit slow, but squash and stretch is just how something kind of moves and changes shape. Anticipation, staging, straight head action, follow through, overlap. It makes it less jarring if there is an ease in or ease out kind of applied to the action, or if it happens more slowly instead of just an immediate change. So what we're trying to accomplish with the transition is just trying to make it so that when something's changing, it's not happening right away. It doesn't look like it's slow per se, and this is actually a little slow. It might actually, we don't want people to think it's loading slowly. So we could actually try 1 second instead, just enough where it's not completely jarring. We can see what happens if we delete this transition and run it. It looks a little bit jarring. It looks kind of chunky. It doesn't look the best. So we could even try half a second. That looks pretty good. So I would encourage you to think about how you could use transitions in the future just to make your user experience feel a little bit more pleasant. When you are working with a transition property, you can work with a variety of CSS properties, including color, background color, border, font size, font weight, margin, padding, opacity, and text shadow. The transition property, you can work with transition property, transition duration, transition timing function, transition delay. For the transition timing function, You can look at ease, linear, ease in, ease out, ease in and out. And your textbook has some examples of this. When you think of ease in and ease out, I would suggest thinking of like driving a car, where a linear change would just be a continual change throughout, versus when you're working with ease in and ease out, it's kind of like driving a car. It takes a while for the car to get up to its top speed, and then when you apply the brakes, it takes a while for it to slow down. When you're easing into a value, it takes a while for it to kind of get up to that full speed, and then when you're easing out, it takes a while for it to change out of the value. So on Canvas, I have a link to CSS dropdowns. And there's a couple of different ways that you can actually create dropdowns. This is part of why I'm linking this. Your textbook and your homework assignment will have you use one method, and this is going to provide kind of an alternate option for how you can create a dropdown. So we'll save this. We'll create a new file. Save as dropdown.html. For the title, we'll do drop-down menu. And we'll leave space for doing embedded styles. Now, one method is going to be doing a unordered list inside of your unordered list. So what this would look like is you have your unordered list. And you have a couple of items in your list. And then inside of one of these, you would actually create another unordered list. That would have items inside of it. So you'll notice this is going to be inside of this second item that we've created. So this would be one way of doing this. Now, another way is going to be like in this example. Let's see. Click on try yourself. We'll go down to what they've created. Theirs is actually pretty different. They have a div that they've created that has a couple of different links, and the structure is different, but the idea behind it is the same. So what's happening here is we have this class called dropdown content. There's 3 links under it, and then everything that's happening is happening up here, where we have this dropdown class, the positions relative inline block, dropdown content, display none, absolute, background color, all of this. And then we have dropdown content A, and what's happening is when we hover over it is when we change it to be displayed or not. We have a couple different options. We have dropdown, hover, for the content, we have hover for just the drop down hover, drop down button. It's the hover that's what's causing it to either show or not show. It's essentially changing the display, and then the styles might change depending as well. So if we were going to add some styles to the example that we have over here, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in a nav as well. If I remember right, I think your textbook might do your drop-down menu the same way as this. But either one of these is valid. Again, it's just the hover which is making it work. So in our styles, we're going to do nav, background, color, 00005D. Letter spacing 0.1 M. Font weight bold. Text align right. Padding right to M. We'll do nav UL. List style type none. Margin 0. Nav li padding 0.5 M. Display inline block. Nav a text decoration none. Display block. To nav a link. Color FFFFFF. Nav a visited color EA. Nav hover color D3 DBEB. Nav UL position absolute. Background color 5564 A0. Padding 0. Text align left. Display none. Nav ULLI. Border 1 pixel solid 00005D. Display block width 8M. Padding left 1M, margin left 0, nav li hover ul, display block. And we need to go back to our HTML and actually fill out some of this content. So let's do a link href equals index.html, homepage. So that's our first one. Then inside of our second, we'll do ahref equals link 1.html, and we'll say link to, we'll end that. Then inside of here, we'll do ahref equals drop down 1.html, drop down 1, and I'm going to remove these and just take this, copy it, change this to 2, 3, and then we'll do another link here, href equals link 2.html. Oh, and I did link 2 up here. 1. So we'll hit save again, refresh. Now we have our links where if we hover, we now have our drop down showing. And again, that's because we are going and changing the display from being none to actually displaying it. Here we have display block. So you can use the textbook examples or this example to kind of help you get started if you want to use a drop down. It's not necessary in the final project. Or you could use the drop down examples that you can find online. Most of the ones I found on W3 Schools all use this different method, but again, it's just the idea of the hover is being what's changing. The same sort of goes for the image gallery. Your textbook has an example for working with the image gallery. And if you are curious as to working with image galleries, you can also look up the W3 Schools image gallery resources, where they will also show you some examples of how you can work with a gallery. This first one is just showing the image. If you click on it, it'll take you to the link to the actual file. So then the file is just opening it up in the browser. It's opening in a new window. So you'll notice we have this gallery that's inside the class, and then it says target blank, which is going to be opening in a new window, and then it has this link to the file, and then it's also showing the file essentially as a thumbnail to just kind of preview it. So this is kind of one option you can work with. They also have some examples of working with responsive image galleries. So here the div gallery is going to change with the hover, so the border changes depending on if you're hovering over it. It's again linking to the image in a new window. It's also changing size. So you do want to experiment a little bit with changing the sizes of your images with your final project. So here we have div.gallery image. They're changing the width to be 100%. And that's within these containers, which are created with divs. Alright, so that's everything we're going to cover for working with different types of media.